celebration of life. Get your daily balances, Kim Jacobs conjure way. We're here to open your eyes, making your day great and your life even better. Say, oh, daily balance, get your daily balance. Daily balance, get your daily balance with Kim.
Hello, welcome to Daily Balance. I'm glad that you've joined us today. On this program, we're talking about everyday heroes. A few months ago, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 took off from LaGuardia Airport in New York, headed for Charlotte, North Carolina, when a double bird strike occurred shortly after takeoff. There was no choice but to ditch the plane in the Hudson River. Our guest today became the last person to exit the back of the plane, risking his own life in frigid water to help other passengers get out safely. Was he in the wrong place at the wrong time? We'll see what he has to say about that. Please welcome Dave Sanderson. Hey, Dave.
Hi, Kim. Thank you.
So glad to have you on.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me today.
Your story is just so touching. And I actually found out that you went to James Madison.
I did go to James Madison.
I didn't even
you
know
went to
that.
James Madison likewise.
Yes, you're a little bit older than me, though.
Just a tad. You're right, just a tad.
You are already, you're doing such a great job in life. And being an everyday hero, you actually were scheduled to be on a different flight. But when you took an earlier flight...
That's correct. I was scheduled to be on the 5 o'clock flight that night.
Okay.
In my job, I basically have to go to businesses and do checks for warehouses and distribution centers. So we went in that morning at 5:30, and I got done by 10:30 that morning.
So you got
I travel 100,000 miles a year in my job. So I have a little game that I play is how quickly can I get home to my family?
Right.
So I called the travel agent, and she put me on flight 1549. So I truly believe that I was meant to be on that flight.
Yes, everything happens. I think nothing happens by chance.
I agree.
So you were meant to be on there. And what did you feel when you heard the words, brace for impact?
I never heard those words before. So I think like everybody on the plane, people were looking around because it was really quiet on that plane. And that's one of the amazing things about this whole situation is once that double bird strike hit, no one said a word. So when he came on and said brace for impact, you knew there was something serious at that point in time.
I mean, I'm trying to envision, because I don't want to just go through and ask you a bunch of questions here.
Yep.
I'm trying to really envision that you're on the plane. Where were you seated in the plane?
I was in 15A. I was 4 rows behind the left wing.
Okay.
So when the birds hit, I heard the explosion, and that's actually which woke me up, because I did what I normally do: get on the plane,
right,
get the magazine out, put my
hustle
head
to
down,
get to sleep.
Don't listen to the flight crew. Don't read the instructions. Don't know where the exit doors are. I do now, but when the birds hit, I heard the explosion, saw the fire coming out from underneath the left wing. I knew there was something wrong, but candidly, I knew he had another engine. So the gentleman next to me said, "What's going on?" I said, "I think he lost an engine. We're going back to LaGuardia," because that's the point when he started banking. I could feel the bank. But I think one of the graces of all this is that the people on the right side of the plane didn't talk to the people on the left side of the plane, because the same thing happened over there. Because I think if people would have talked, there'd been a lot of panic.
Right.
And one of the real lessons out of this is if you keep your mind and don't lose your mind, you can actually survive something like this.
Interesting. And all of the airline stewardess, everybody was just calm?
Everybody, I would say not calm, but no one was out of sorts.
Okay.
Everybody went internal, because I think once that happened, is people started realizing this is not going to be a good outcome.
Right.
And everybody started getting internalized. And I think even the flight crew, which I've talked to, they knew they had a job to do, and they did an outstanding job. But everybody knew on that plane that probably wasn't going to be a positive outcome.
Wow. And then what happened once the plane actually hit the water?
Well, when it hit 155 miles an hour.
Wow.
So, if you ever had the opportunity to talk to Captain Sullenberger, and I've had the privilege 3 times, he'll tell you there's really 2 defining moments.
Yes.
The first defining moment was getting that plane over that bridge, because he was headed straight for that bridge that day. And how fortunate are we to have somebody like Captain Sullenberger with 19,000 hours of flight experience and a certified glider expert,
goodness.
and a first officer with 19,000 hours experience with Jeff Skiles. And he'll tell you the real key to this was gliding that plane over that bridge, because it was less than a minute after that is when we crashed, and the crash was hard. You might have seen some other shows where you've heard the flight attendant, and she was exactly right. It was a hard hit, 155. But he landed that thing perfectly.
Yes.
Perfectly.
I love it. I love it. And tell us about that mother and baby. There's a profound story about that.
Well, I was, like I mentioned, one of the last people off the plane. I was the last person in the back of the plane. And I never got on the wing. I never got on the lifeboat because one of the things about this whole experience, and people ask me all the time, how did those people get on those wings?
Right.
And I tell folks, when we hit, all those seats collapsed, and people were actually walking down the seats on the sides, and they got out those wings out fast. I went out the middle aisle, and I went out to the right wing. And candidly, I never got on the lifeboat because there was no room. People were already filled up. So I was hanging out the door, waist deep water, for 7 minutes. And lady with the baby, her name's Tess. Okay. And she was a mother with 2 kids. The first child, I think, is 3 or 4 years old, and the other one's 4 months old. Wow. The one who was 4 years old, was on a lifeboat. She was standing in the middle of the wing by herself with the baby. Now, she was in shock. Let's visualize this because, I mean, this is profound what you're saying. Well, the wing. The wing is full. It's full. It's full, and she's standing in the middle of the wing. Okay, this mother with the 4-month-old is on the 4-year-old. The 4-year-old is on the wrap. Okay, now and she's holding her 4-month-old baby, holding there by herself. Okay, and candidly, she was I think in shock, and I get a lot of credit for this, but I really shouldn't get the credit because all I did is startle her to wake her up. Because all I did is I said, throw the baby, screamed at her because she had to move. Because my thought process at the moment is 2 things. Number one, if she tried to get on that lifeboat with that baby, you got to remember it's 11 degrees in New York that day, 36-degree water, but there's jet fuel all over this wing. Yes. She tries to take a step, she falls in the river, and that river is flowing so fast, she's done. But then the business side came in and says if she doesn't move, people can't walk down that wing. Right. And they can't get out. So she had to move. Yes. But there was a lady in the front of the lifeboat, and this is where it's amazing how things lined up perfectly. Her name, is, and she came from Knoxville, Tennessee, and she said, I'm a mother of 3, and she said, give me the baby. And I think women handle things differently than men. Yes. I mean, that's just what my belief. And when she looked at her nuts and gave me the baby, Tess gave her the baby. Good. And all of a sudden, she gave her the baby, Tess gets on the lifeboat, and everything starts happening. So I think she's a real hero. Both of those ladies are real heroes. Awesome. There's so many. It seems like there's so many heroes in this situation. I agree. And you stopped. You paused, you made sure that everyone was out. Where did that come from? It has to come from somewhere, Dave. Well, I went out to the middle of the aisle when the plane crashed, and there was a lot of chaos on the plane. I use that term on TV, control chaos, because things are falling out from up top, things are floating, water's coming in, and went from knee deep immediately. And so I went out and just waited for the back, and because the whole time my mother was in my brain. She kept saying, and this is from when I was a kid, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And that started, and as soon as we crashed and I looked around and saw everybody had gone out, do the right thing, God will take care of you. And this whole time, my mother was, I think, my guardian angel who was walking me through this whole thing. Wow. And your mom, she's no longer here. She's no longer here. So I think, I always, one of the things my dad always told me is like, you want to make sure you make your mom proud. Yes. And so, when you're going through all this and things move slowly in these kind of situations, in your mind, even though it's going, this whole thing happened in less than 6 minutes. I remember that since I was a little kid, and it just came back at that moment. Do the right thing, God will take care of you. And every moment I had to make that decision, we made the right decision because that just kept going through my brain. You did the right thing. That's a high five moment on our show. Thank you. Oh. So what was the defining moment overall for you? Well, there's been a lot of defining moments. A lot of people ask me that, and it's like, is it the crash? Is it helping the lady with the baby? Is it the ferry boats? There's so many moments. Yes. But really, I'd say that the defining moment, this whole situation occurred after. Oh. And it's really happened. I've spoken over 70 times. Yes. And I spoke at one place, and I got done with my talk, and people were coming up to talk to me. And there's one elderly lady, she's about 80 years old, comes walking right down the middle of the aisle, looking right at me. And I'm looking at her, and I don't know what she's coming for, but she comes up and grabs my arm in front of everybody and says, I was questioning if there was a God, and I don't believe in miracles, but you're physical evidence of both. Thank you. And she turns and walks away. And I'm like, everybody in this whole place got quiet. Some started crying. My minister's standing there looking at me. I'm looking at him. I don't know what to say, but that was a defining moment in my life because I realized what happened to me had impacted somebody. Yes. And now somebody now believes that there is a greater being because I'm sitting here today sharing the story. I think that was a defining moment. Oh. High five again. You're going to give me a lot of high five moments on this show. That's so true. You know what? We're going to come back with more with Dave Sanderson about another group of everyday heroes when Daily Balance returns. I'm so glad you
Daily Balance with Kim Jacobs is sponsored in part by 5 Links. 5 Links is committed to being in the forefront of the telecommunications industry and offers products and services throughout the United States and worldwide. Services include Global Links digital phone, cellular services, satellite TV, high-speed internet, Global Links Wi-Fi phones, and 5 Links home security. For more information, call 1-800-575-4021 or visit our website today.
Welcome back. I've been talking with Dave Sanderson, an ordinary person in an extraordinary situation. If you've just joined us, Dave was the last passenger off a plane that recently crashed into the Hudson River and was largely responsible for helping others get off that plane safely. So, Dave, how did you get off of the plane yourself?
Well, that's a story amongst itself, because what happened is that people were walking down the wing. I was on the right side. I never got on the wing, so I was hanging out the door. And there was this little tugboat that came in between the plane and the ferry boat. And he had a good plan, but unfortunately, when he backed out, he hit the front of the plane. The plane was going down. And when he hit the front of the plane, it shook the plane. And when he shook the plane, I took water up my back. Now, I've already been waist deep in the water for 7 minutes. When I hit, the water went up my back, I'm like thinking about Titanic. It's like, I'm going to be sucked down with this plane. It's time to go. I always stop and thank my parents here, because unless they gave me swimming lessons when I was a kid, I would never been able to get off that plane to swim. And I tell folks, it's like, you never know when that moment's going to come in your life, and you have to cash in everything you've learned to save your life, save somebody else's life, or just help somebody.
Yes.
And that was my moment, because I had to cash in those things like swimming and keeping my mind at the same time. And so I jumped into the water, and I swam to the closest ferry I could find, which was at the end of the wing. And
so crazy what you're saying. I mean, this is like unbelievable stuff.
It's a lot of stories that people haven't heard yet. And it's, when I got to that ferry boat, I didn't have any strength. But it's amazing when you have so much adrenaline going, you can do anything. And that's what was going on, because I shouldn't even be here today, being in the water as long as I was.
Right.
And you talk to the EMTs, and they're like, I don't know how you did this. And well, I think there's a lot of reasons I did this.
Yes.
But that's how I got off the plane and got to the ferry boat. And when I got to the ferry boat, they were yelling to me, you got to climb, you got to climb. And I said, I can't. But, my mother's voice got in my head again. She goes,
oh, yes, you can.
Because one of the things she always said is, where she hated was can't.
Can't means won't try in my
said,
family.
If you can't, you must.
Yes.
And that's what she said in my head. So I just reached up, and Kayla had 2 angels that grabbed my arms. I'm not a small guy. They picked me up 8 feet, 10 feet, and threw me on this ferry boat. I went slide through this ferry boat. That's how I got out of the water.
Oh my goodness! So these are like the first responders.
First responders.
And we heard a lot about them. Well, we don't hear enough about them, actually, unfortunately. But I know that there was an appreciation lunch for them. Well, how did that go?
Well, Captain Sullenberger was exactly right. He and Skiles got us down, and the crew and the passenger got out. But the real heroes that day were the first responders.
Yes,
and the first of the first responders were the New York Waterway.
Oh, wonderful.
And they were there within 3 minutes of this crash. So back in July, Barry Leonard, another passenger, and I came up with an idea. We wanted to do something for them to say thank you. And no one had brought every one of those groups together yet.
Okay.
So with the help of Palisades Medical Center, where Barry and I were in the hospital, we pulled every one of the first responder groups together and had a luncheon for them. And looking out in the crowd, seeing all the different uniforms of all the different people that helped that day.
Yes.
And just seeing the gratefulness they have for someone just appreciating what they did was something I'll never forget. It's something that I think needs to happen more often, to thank these people.
Yes.
But it's amazing to see these people who put their lives on the line too.
Yes.
To make sure the 155 people had another life, another day.
And now Captain Sullenberger, you were mentioning him. He passed on the opportunity to attend the luncheon. Do you know why?
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly why, but I think my belief is that he wanted to give the focus that day to the first responders.
Oh, cool.
I think U.S. Airways was definitely represented that day. But, if he would have been there, sort of taken maybe some of the focus off of the first responders. I really believe as he said, these are the true heroes that day.
Oh, and you know what? Everything I've read about him has been that he's just really trying to take the focus off of him as an individual and really give credit where it needs to go.
He's had such a challenge with the term hero.
Yes.
He doesn't want to accept that, but now I think he accepts it because, people need a hero.
Oh, yeah.
And people look up to him for his
you're my
way.
hero.
Well, I appreciate, thank you.
I'm so proud of you.
And I just think he understands that, and he wants to make sure other people get the recognition that he's been able to get likewise.
Good. Now, have you all done some other things with the first responders since that luncheon?
We have. I recently spoke to the American Red Cross, not only in Charlotte, but in Monroe here in North Carolina, but in Pittsburgh. And, I get the opportunity, to be able to go and help the American Red Cross with their mission, because they helped me that day with my, getting back to where I'm at right now. So I get to speak to their groups and their fundraisers to help them share their message.
Oh, good. And you know what? When we were talking about Brace for Impact, when we were going to break, all I could think about is how scary those words would be to me. And you are actually getting ready to write you have a book coming out, and it's called Brace for Impact.
Myself and some of the passengers, about 10 other passengers, put together this book. And it's a different type of book. The book really starts from the moment of the crash forward, because all of our lives have changed 180 degrees. You can't really describe what's changed in our lives. My life has, to the point where I had the opportunity to speak with you today.
Yes.
So it's this book's called Brace for Impact, and it's from really how life changes when you go through something like this. And basically about 10 to 11, 12 different stories of how people's lives change. And from the moment you heard those words, Brace for Impact, forward.
Thank you so much for being here, Dave. We'll be back in a few moments. Pam Jeffson with the American Red Cross will join us right after this break.
Daily Balance with Kim Jacobs is sponsored in part by the Rock Worship Center, Church of God in Christ, located at 1113 Fordham Road, Charlotte, North Carolina. The Rock Worship Center, making disciples through evangelism, exaltation, and edification. For more information, call 704-358-4167 or visit our website at rockworshipcenter.org.
Today's program is about everyday heroes. I'd like to introduce a lady who gets an up-close and personal look at disaster all too often. Please welcome the CEO of the Carolinas Piedmont Region Red Cross, Pam Jeffson. Hey, Pam.
Hey.
How are you? I'm so glad you stopped by today.
Thank you.
You know what? People really don't get a chance to know all of the great services that the Red Cross provides, and I really wanted you to share with everyone some of the services out there.
Oh, sure, I'd love to. We're simultaneously working in our local community every day to help people, and at the same time getting prepared for large-scale disasters so that we're ready to help our community. So every day we're doing training and first aid and CPR and aquatics. We take people back and forth to medical appointments. We connect military families together with their military personnel. We provide disaster relief mostly for house fires, almost one every day.
Well, good. I mean, you all do a lot more than people really know, that's for sure. What about the incident that happened on the Hudson River that day? What did you all have to do with that?
Well, we have an agreement with the federal government that if there is a plane crash or an incident of some kind, that we are there to help both the victims and also their families. So at both the point of origin of the flight and the destination point of the flight, we are there with teams of people, with mental health folks. We're there with food and snacks. We have daycare providers in case, the kids need to be taken care of while their parents are doing other things. And so that particular day, I was at the reception center here in Charlotte, waiting with families, giving people hugs, and while they waited for the folks who were on the plane to fly back into Charlotte.
Oh, you have such a special job. That's awesome. I mean, that's really a rewarding experience.
It is.
It really is. Oh, wow. Dave, how did you see the Red Cross overall in that moment?
Well, the Red Cross was there for me from the time I got to land all the way back to Charlotte. When the time I got to the ferry docks, there was 3 people waiting for me, 2 EMTs and somebody from the American Red Cross with a blanket. Throughout that whole night, when things were going on, where a lot of things were happening, I didn't have any clothes. So they took all my clothes off because I was in the water and I was freezing. So somebody in the middle of the night from the Red Cross came and brought me some sweats and a stocking cap and some ugly shoes to wear home that night.
Some ugly shoes?
But I was just grateful that I had something to wear.
That's
I had no clothes.
Oh.
And that next morning after I flew back, Pam was with my family when I got off the plane with U.S. Airways to greet me. And we walked up to the U.S. Air Club and got to meet the chaplain, and Pam told me whenever I need anything to give her a call.
Oh.
She has been in a plane crash likewise, so she understands some of the challenges you go through.
Oh, I didn't know that you were in a plane crash.
Yeah, it was about 8 years ago, and so Dave and I kind of have a bond. you know,
Okay.
yeah.
And so do you all do some things together now?
Well, we do Red Cross events together.
Anytime the Pam needs somebody to speak at a Red Cross event,
Yes.
I'm there for her. I've spoken at least 3 events here in Charlotte, but I'm speaking nationally now for the Red Cross, and I'm honored to be able to do that, not only locally but also nationally.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And what did you learn from that day? What was like a takeaway lesson that you learned from that day, Dave?
Well, there's a lot of lessons that came out of that day.
Of course.
But I guess one of the big lessons was you got the teamwork lesson, 155 people pulling together. You had leadership. But I tell you, the one thing that really comes back is about resourcefulness.
Yes.
People had to be resourceful through the whole time, whether it was Sullenberger getting down, people getting off the plane, working with people like the Red Cross and EMTs. What they had to do to be resourceful, just make this thing happen, the ferry boats. So I think resourcefulness is probably the one thing that stands out amongst anything else.
That's amazing. So is this typically your role in situations like this?
It is. It is. As I say, we've got a team of people that's ready to respond, and part of what we're doing every day is making sure that we have systems in place and resources in place so that we're ready to help people, whether it's a plane crash or it's a big disaster or a small disaster like a house fire.
So you live such a fulfilling life.
It really is.
Oh, that's a
yes.
high-five moment on my
Okay.
show.
All right.
That's a high-five moment. Oh, my goodness. How do people get, everybody feels it's a high-five moment. How do people get involved with the Red Cross?
Well, we have volunteers that do most of our work. We have about 200 volunteers for every paid staff person. So we don't get anything done without volunteers. So we have a website, redcrosshelps.org.
redcrosshelps.org. And you can also learn more about them on dailybalancewithkim.tv. Okay.
So people can see what kinds of things we have available, and I think we can put just about anybody to work as a volunteer because we have so many different kinds of things to do, and it's all just great work.
Well, if they're going to get to work with people like you who are also everyday heroes, technically, then they're going to have a fulfilling volunteer experience. So, speaking of websites, that's so funny. Before we went to break, I'd asked Dave about his website. Now, he's so busy being a hero here and helping people. He didn't know his website at the time, but guess what? During the break, we found out from his assistant that his website is braceforimpact.hci